Commander Sarah Chen stepped off the transport shuttle and looked around Kepler Station. The place was huge. Metal walls stretched up so high she could barely see the ceiling. Lights blinked everywhere like stars. Aliens of every shape and size walked past her. Sarah had never seen so many different species in one place. There were tall, blue beings with 4 arms, short gray creatures that floated instead of walked, things that looked like giant insects wearing clothes, and many others she could not even describe. "Welcome to Kepler Station," said a voice near her. Sarah turned and saw a human man in a uniform like hers. "I'm Lieutenant Marcus Webb. I'll show you around." "Thanks," Sarah said. "This place is amazing." Marcus nodded. "It's the biggest trade hub in this part of space. The Galactic Council built it here because it's right at the edge of their territory. Perfect spot for meetings and business." They walked through the main corridor. Sarah noticed how other aliens looked at them. Most barely glanced their way. A few stared like they were looking at something strange but not important. "They don't think much of humans, do they?" Sarah asked. "Not really," Marcus said. "We're pretty new here. Only been part of the council for about 10 years. Most of these species have been here for thousands of years." As they walked, Sarah saw signs everywhere written in different alien languages. But there were also small English words below them. The signs told people where to go and what rules to follow. "The council has a system," Marcus explained. "Everything is organized by threat levels. The scanner at the main entrance reads every person who comes through. It tells security how dangerous someone might be." "How does that work?" Sarah asked. "Each species gets a category number. 1 is the lowest risk. 10 is the highest, but nobody has ever seen a 10 before. 9 is reserved for the worst criminals and monsters." They stopped at a viewing window. Below them, the main entrance was busy with travelers. Sarah watched as beings walked through a large metal arch. "That's the scanner," Marcus pointed. "Listen." A tall, blue alien walked through. "Kitharin Noble, Category 2, Elevated Caution," announced a computer voice. Next came a huge creature covered in scales and wearing armor. "Vorthak Warrior, Category 4, Standard Military Protocol." "The Kitharans are at the top," Marcus said. "They made most of the technology everyone uses. Smart as they come. The Vorthak are the soldiers. Strong and tough. Good fighters." "What about humans?" Sarah asked. "Category 7, Marcus said, and Sarah could hear something sad in his voice. "Low risk. They think we're useful for basic work, but nothing important." Sarah frowned. "That seems wrong." "Maybe, but that's how it is. We do our jobs, keep our heads down, and try to prove we belong here." They continued the tour. Marcus showed her the diplomatic quarters where the humans lived. It was a small section compared to what other species had. The rooms were basic, but clean. "Tomorrow you meet with the council representatives," Marcus said. "Just routine stuff. Trade agreements, security updates, that kind of thing." "Any advice?" Sarah asked. "Be polite. Don't argue. They've been doing this a lot longer than we have." That evening, Sarah sat in her room reading reports about the different species. The Kitharans had built most of the council's technology. They were proud of being the smartest. The Vorthak were warriors who had conquered many worlds before joining the council. They respected strength above everything else. There were dozens of other species. Some were good at business. Others were explorers or artists or scientists. Each had their place in the council's order. Humans were listed at the bottom. Recent members, limited technology, useful for basic labor and simple tasks, not considered a threat to anyone. Sarah closed the report. Something about it bothered her, but she could not put her finger on what. The next morning, she got ready for the council meeting. She put on her best uniform and made sure she looked professional. Marcus met her at her door. "Ready?" he asked. As ready as I can be, Sarah said. They walked toward the main part of the station. The corridors were busier now. Morning rush hour, Marcus called it, everyone going to work or meetings. Remember, Marcus said as they got close to the scanner entrance, just walk through normally. The scanner will do its thing, announce Category 7, and then we go to the meeting. Sarah nodded. She had done this before on other stations. It was routine. But as they reached the entrance, Sarah noticed something strange. The usual busy noise of the corridor seemed to get quieter. Aliens were slowing down and looking their way. That's odd, Marcus said quietly. They reached the scanner. Marcus went first. Human male. Category 7 standard clearance, the computer announced. Normal. Sarah stepped forward into the metal arch. She expected to hear the same announcement Marcus got. Instead, the scanner made a strange humming sound. The humming got louder. Lights on the scanner started blinking faster. The computer voice that came next was different, uncertain. Unknown entity detected. Processing. Please remain still. Sarah stood in the scanner as it hummed and clicked around her. Marcus looked worried. Other travelers stopped to watch. Processing complete, the computer finally said. Its voice was now sharp and urgent. Category 10, maximum risk protocol. All personnel maintain safe distance. Loud alarms started going off. Red lights flashed everywhere. Heavy metal barriers slammed down around the scanner, trapping Sarah inside. Security teams ran toward them from every direction, weapons ready. Sarah stood perfectly still in her metal cage, confused but not scared. Around her, chaos erupted as aliens dove for cover and guards took positions. She looked at Marcus through the barrier. His face was pale with shock. Category 10, he whispered. That's impossible. The metal barriers around Sarah hummed with energy. Through the clear sections, she could see security guards pointing weapons at her. Aliens in the corridor pressed against walls or hid behind anything they could find. Sarah stood calmly with her hands visible. She had been in dangerous situations before, but this was different. She had done nothing wrong, yet every alarm on the station was screaming. Heavy footsteps approached. The crowd parted as a tall figure walked toward the scanner. Sarah had never seen anything like it before. The creature stood at least 8 feet tall with 4 arms and skin that looked like blue metal. Its eyes had many sides like a cut gem. I am High Technician Veltar, the being said. Its voice sounded like music and machinery at the same time. I oversee all scanner operations on this station. Veltar moved to a control panel near the scanner. Its 4 arms worked quickly, pressing buttons and reading displays. In 3,000 years of operation, Veltar continued, our scanners have never registered anything above Category 9. A Category 10 reading should not be possible. Then maybe your machine is broken, said Marcus from behind the security line. Veltar's gem-like eyes turned toward him. Ketheran technology does not break human. But you may be correct that something is wrong here. The high technician worked at the controls for several minutes. Sarah watched lights blink and heard computers talking to each other in languages she did not understand. I am running a complete diagnostic, Veltar announced to the crowd. This will determine if there is a malfunction. While they waited, more aliens gathered. Sarah saw creatures she had never imagined. Some floated in the air. Others had too many legs or arms or eyes. A few looked almost human, but with strange colors or features. They all stared at her. Some looked afraid. Others seemed curious. A few appeared angry. The diagnostic is complete, Veltar said. All systems are functioning perfectly. The crowd murmured in different languages. Sarah heard worry and confusion in their voices. Run it again, Marcus called out. There has to be an error. I will recalibrate the entire system, Veltar said. This will take longer, but will be more thorough. Sarah waited patiently. Being trapped was not pleasant, but she understood their concern. If their machine really thought she was the most dangerous thing they had ever seen, they had to be careful. 20 minutes passed. The scanner made new sounds as Veltar worked. Finally, the machines went quiet. "Recalibration complete," Veltar announced. "Scanning subject again." The humming started once more. Lights blinked around Sarah as the scanner examined her again. "Category 10, the computer said again. "Maximum risk protocol maintained." The crowd got very quiet. Even the security guards looked nervous. "Impossible," Veltar whispered. That was when Sarah heard new footsteps. These were heavier than the others, and they made the metal floor shake slightly. The crowd moved aside again. The creature that approached made Sarah look up. It was even taller than Veltar, but built completely differently. Where the Kithrin was thin and graceful, this being was massive and powerful. It had 4 arms too, but these were thick with muscle. Its skin was covered in dark scales, and old scars marked its face and arms. "I am Champion Korgan of the Vorthak," the creature announced. Its voice was deep and rough like rocks grinding together. "I have heard enough." Korgan stepped closer to the scanner. Sarah could see weapons hanging from its belt and armor covering its chest and shoulders. "For 3,000 years, your machines have worked perfectly, Catherine. You say they do not lie. You say they cannot be fooled." "That is correct," Veltar replied, though Sarah heard uncertainty in its musical voice. "Then, perhaps," Korgan said, looking directly at Sarah, "your machine simply recognizes a pretender when it scans one." The champion's 4 arms moved, and Sarah saw muscles ripple under its scales. "I have fought across 7 star systems. I have defeated warriors from 50 different worlds. My strength is known throughout the galaxy." Korgan pointed at Sarah with one thick finger. "But this small creature from an unknown world registers higher than me. Higher than any warrior who ever lived. This is not possible unless—" The champion paused, and Sarah saw something dangerous in its eyes. "Unless it is hiding what it truly is," Korgan finished. "Unless it uses trickery to fool your machines." "I'm not hiding anything," Sarah said quietly. These were her first words since the scanner had trapped her. Korgan laughed, but the sound was not happy. "Of course you would say that. All pretenders claim innocence." "Champion Korghan," Veltar interrupted, "perhaps we should—" "No." Korghan's voice got louder. "I challenge this false Category 10. Let it prove the scanner's accuracy." Sarah felt her heart beat faster. She had heard about Vorthak challenges. They usually ended with someone getting hurt. "I'm a diplomat," Sarah said. "I'm here for trade meetings, not fighting." "All the more reason why you cannot be Category 10, Korgan replied. "True warriors do not hide behind words." The champion turned to address the crowd. "I propose a test. If this creature is truly the greatest threat our scanners have ever detected, let it prove this in combat." Excited voices rose from the aliens watching. Sarah heard what sounded like agreement from many of them. "If it defeats me," Korgan continued, "then perhaps your machines speak truth. If it cannot, then we know they are broken and need repair." "This is not necessary," Marcus called out, but his voice was lost in the crowd noise. Veltar looked troubled. "Combat challenges are legal under council law, but—" "But nothing," Korgan said. "I invoke my right as champion to test any being that claims warrior status through threat assessment." Sarah realized she was trapped in more ways than one. The metal barriers held her body, but custom and law were creating another cage around her. "What are the rules?" she asked quietly. Korgan smiled, showing teeth that looked like they could bite through metal. "Simple. Standard challenge format. First to yield loses. No weapons besides what we carry naturally." "And if I refuse?" "Then you admit the scanner is wrong, and you are not Category 10, Korgan said. "You will be reclassified, and your species will be marked as deceptive." Sarah understood. Refusing would mean admitting humans had somehow tricked the most advanced technology in known space. That would make things much worse for her people. "When?" she asked. "Now," Korgan replied. "The arena level has an open challenge ring. We can settle this quickly." Sarah looked at Marcus. Her friend's face was pale with worry. She looked at Veltar, who seemed as confused as everyone else. Then she looked at Champion Korgan, with his scars and weapons and absolute confidence. "All right," Sarah said. "Let's find out what your scanner really detected." The arena level was packed. Word had traveled fast through the station's communication systems. A human had registered Category 10 on the Catharan scanners, and Champion Korgan was going to test whether the reading was real. Sarah walked into the challenge ring wearing her standard diplomatic uniform. No armor, no visible weapons. Across the ring, Korgan entered like a walking war machine. His ceremonial battle gear gleamed under the arena lights. Weapons hung from his belt and shoulders. Each piece of equipment looked like it had seen real combat. The ring itself was simple, a circular area about 50 feet across, surrounded by energy barriers to protect the watching crowd. The floor was made of some kind of metal that felt solid under Sarah's feet. "This is going to be a disaster," Marcus whispered to another human in the crowd. Around them, hundreds of aliens found seats or floating positions to watch. Sarah could see creatures from dozens of different worlds. Some looked excited. Others seemed worried. Many appeared curious about what would happen. High Technician Veltar served as the official observer. Its 4 arms worked at a control panel that would monitor the fight and declare a winner. "Combat challenge rules are in effect," Veltar announced. "First combatant to yield loses. No outside weapons permitted. Combat ends when one fighter cannot or will not continue." Sarah looked up at the crowd. She found Marcus and gave him a small nod. She was not as worried as he was. "Combatants, prepare yourselves," Veltar continued. Korgan removed his weapons and handed them to an assistant. Even without them, he looked dangerous. His 4 arms were thick with muscle. Scars covered his dark-scaled skin. When he moved, Sarah could see power in every step. "You may yield now if you wish," Korgan said to her. "I will not think less of you for admitting the truth." "I appreciate that," Sarah replied calmly, "but I think we should see what happens." The champion stretched his arms and rolled his massive shoulders. "Very well. When you yield, the machine's error will be proven." "Maybe," Sarah said. She had not moved from her relaxed position in the center of the ring. "Combatants ready?" Veltar called. Sarah nodded. Korgan dropped into what was clearly a fighting position. "Begin!" Korgan charged immediately. For something so large, he moved surprisingly fast. His 4 arms spread wide as he rushed toward Sarah, trying to grab her in what would surely be a crushing hold. Sarah waited until the last possible moment. Then she did something simple. She stepped to her left and slightly forward. As Korgan's momentum carried him past her, she grabbed his leading right arm with both hands. Using his own speed and weight against him, she pulled and twisted. The champion's feet left the ground. 8 feet and hundreds of pounds of warrior flew through the air, spinning, before crashing into the energy barrier at the edge of the ring. The crowd went completely silent. Korgan hit the barrier hard and slumped to the ground. For a moment, he did not move. Sarah stood in the same spot where the fight had started, looking calm and relaxed. Slowly, Korgan pushed himself up. His eyes were wide with surprise and confusion. "How did you—" "You're fast for your size," Sarah said. "But you charged straight ahead. That made you predictable." The champion got to his feet and shook his head to clear it. Sarah could see he was hurt, but not seriously injured. "Impressive," Korgan said. "But that was luck. It will not happen again." This time he approached more carefully. He kept his balance better and used his forearms to try different attacks. He was clearly skilled at fighting. But Sarah moved like water around his strikes. Every punch missed. Every grab found empty air. When Korgan tried to corner her, she was already somewhere else. "Stop running," Korgan growled. "I'm not running," Sarah replied. "I'm right here." The champion tried a new approach. He used all four arms at once, throwing punches and grabs from different angles. It should have been impossible for Sarah to avoid them all. Instead, she ducked under one arm, stepped around another, and caught the third at the wrist. Using Korgan's own attack against him again, she twisted and pulled. The champion spun and crashed to the ground. "The scanner's not broken," Sarah said as Korgan struggled to his feet. Her voice was still calm, like she was having a casual conversation. The crowd was not quiet anymore. Voices rose in dozens of languages. Sarah heard shock and disbelief and something that might have been fear. Korgan was breathing heavily now. "This is not possible. You are too small." "Too weak." "Size isn't everything," Sarah said, "and I'm stronger than I look." "Prove it," Korgan snarled. He charged again, but this time Sarah did not step aside. She met his charge head-on. The impact echoed through the arena. For a moment, the two fighters were locked together, Korgan's four arms against Sarah's two. Then Sarah pushed. Korgan skidded backward across the metal floor. His eyes went wide with shock. "How?" he gasped. Sarah had barely seemed to strain. "You wanted to know what the scanner detected. The question is, when will you admit what that was?" The champion looked at her with new understanding. For the first time since the fight began, he seemed truly uncertain. "You are not what you appear to be," he said quietly. "None of us are," Sarah replied. "Your people see strength in muscle and scars. My people see strength in other things." Korgan straightened up. Sarah could see him thinking, analyzing what had happened. "You could have hurt me seriously," he said. "Both times you threw me, you could have aimed for the hard walls instead of the energy barriers." "Yes," Sarah said simply. "And when we locked strength, you could have pushed harder. Broken bones." "Yes. But you did not." Sarah shook her head. "You're not my enemy. You're just confused about what I am." Korgan was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, respectful. "I yield," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. The crowd erupted in voices. Some sounded angry. Others seemed afraid. Many were just confused. Sarah walked over to where Korgan stood. She offered her hand to help steady him. "You fought with honor," she said. The champion looked at her hand, then at her face. Slowly, he reached out and clasped her hand with one of his own. "As did you, warrior," he replied. "Though I begin to think warrior is not the right word for what you are." "What would be the right word?" Sarah asked. Korgan looked up at the crowd, then back at her. "I do not know, but I think your scanner does." High Technician Veltar's voice cut through the crowd noise. "Combat challenge concluded. Winner, the human-designated Category 10. Sarah looked up at the crowd of watching aliens. She could see fear in many faces now. The comfortable order they had known for thousands of years had just been broken by a small human in a diplomatic uniform. "Now what?" she asked Korgan quietly. The champion was holding his side where he had hit the barrier. "Now they will want to know what you really are, and why their scanners knew it when they did not." High Technician Veltar worked frantically at its control station while the crowd slowly left the arena. The combat was over, but questions remained. How had a Category 7 species produced a Category 10 individual? The Catharin's gem-like eyes flickered between different displays as it searched for answers. "Access Galactic Council databases," Veltar commanded its computer systems. "Search classification, human species, origin world Sol 3. Standard access granted." the computer replied in its musical voice. Displaying current records. The information appeared on Veltar's screens. Everything looked normal. Humans were a young species from a moderate world. They had basic technology and limited military capability. Nothing explained what had just happened in the arena. This cannot be correct, Veltar muttered. Sarah and Champion Korgan sat on a bench at the edge of the arena. The Vorthak was still catching his breath, and Sarah was answering his questions. Your movements, Korgan said. They were not random. You knew exactly what I would do before I did it. Experience, Sarah replied. Where I come from, you learn to read body language early. Your shoulders told me which way you were going to move. And your strength? I have fought creatures twice my size who could not push me as you did. Sarah shrugged. I grew up in heavy gravity. Makes your muscles work harder for everything. Korgan frowned. How much heavier? About 70% more than standard. The champion's eyes widened. That would crush most species. We're used to it. Meanwhile, Veltar was having problems with the database. Computer, expand search parameters. Include classified records. Higher clearance required, the computer responded. Authorization Veltar Prime 77 Alpha. Emergency protocol. Access granted to Level 5 classified materials. New information flooded Veltar's screens. The Kitharan's 4 arms moved quickly to process it all. What it found made its skin change color with shock. The real records about Earth were very different from the public ones. Sol III was not a moderate world. It was classified as a Class 12 death world, one of the most dangerous planet types known to exist. The gravity was not just heavy, it was crushing by galactic standards. The atmosphere contained oxygen at levels that would be toxic to most species. But the worst part was the life that had developed there. Computer display predator to prey ratios for Sol 3. 94% of large fauna classified as predatory species. Veltar's hands shook as it read the data. On most worlds, predators made up less than 10% of large animals. Earth was almost entirely made up of creatures that hunted and killed other creatures. Display extinction events, Sol III. 5 major extinction events survived, 12 minor events. Species development continued through all catastrophes. Veltar realized it was looking at something unprecedented. Humans had not just evolved on a death world. They had survived multiple planet-wide disasters that should have wiped them out completely. Computer, access human military records. Full classification. Level 7 clearance required. Emergency authorization accepted. Displaying classified military data. What Veltar saw next made it understand why the scanners had marked Sarah as Category 10. Human conflicts were not like other species' wars. They were constant, brutal, and involved the entire population. Humans fought each other with a dedication that other species reserved for defending against extinction-level threats, and they were good at it. The death rates in human conflicts were staggering. The weapons they developed were designed not just to win battles, but to completely destroy enemies. Their tactics were efficient and ruthless. But the most disturbing fact was the last entry in the file. Species considers itself primary threat to own survival. Continues development despite this assessment. Veltar's screen chimed with an incoming message. High Council emergency session called. All department heads required to attend immediately. The Kitharan looked across the arena to where Sarah sat talking with Korgan. The human looked so small and harmless, but the scanners did not lie, and now Veltar knew why. In the arena, Korgan was asking more questions. Your people fight often? Too often, Sarah admitted. We've gotten good at it because we've had a lot of practice. Against what enemies? Sarah was quiet for a moment. Mostly each other. That surprised the champion. You are against your own species? For most of our history, yes. We've only recently started working together. Why did you fight each other instead of joining forces? Lots of reasons. Resources, territory, ideas about how to live. Sometimes we fought just because we could. Corgan studied her face. And now? Now we know we're not alone in the universe. We're trying to be better. The scanner detected this history in you? Sarah nodded. Probably. Where I come from shaped what I am. I can't change that. But you chose not to seriously hurt me, even though you could have. Fighting isn't always about winning, Sarah said. Sometimes it's about understanding. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of several officials. Veltar led the group, along with representatives from multiple species. Sarah Chen, Veltar said formally. The High Council requests your immediate presence for an emergency session. Sarah stood up. Am I in trouble? That remains to be determined, Veltar replied, but its voice was not unfriendly. There are questions that need answers. The group moved toward the council chambers. As they walked, more aliens joined them. Sarah recognized some species from her orientation briefings, but others were new to her. What kind of questions? Sarah asked. Questions about your species' true classification, answered a floating creature covered in silver scales. Questions about why our records were incomplete. Questions about whether we can trust you, added another alien that looked like a walking tree. Sarah felt the weight of attention from dozens of different beings. All of them were trying to figure out what she represented. I can only speak for myself, Sarah said carefully. Perhaps, said Veltar, that will be enough. They reached the council chamber doors. Sarah could hear many voices inside, all talking at once in different languages. Before we go in, Sarah said, stopping the group, I want you to know something. They all looked at her. The scanner was right. My species is dangerous. We've spent thousands of years proving that to ourselves. Several of the aliens stepped back slightly. But, Sarah continued, being dangerous and being a threat are different things. We're here because we chose to be better than what we were. How can we know that? Asked the tree-like alien. Sarah looked directly at it. Because if we hadn't chosen to be better, you never would have met us. We would have destroyed ourselves long before we reached the stars. Veltar's gem-like eyes studied her face. The scanner detected potential for great harm. Yes, Sarah said simply, but also the choice not to use it. Yes. That, said Veltar thoughtfully, may be the most dangerous combination of all. The High Council chamber was chaos. Representatives from 47 different species filled the space, all talking at once. Some floated in the air, others sat in chairs designed for their specific body types. A few hung from the ceiling. The noise was incredible. Sarah entered with her escort and immediately felt hundreds of different eyes focus on her. Conversation stopped as beings turned to stare at the human who had broken their understanding of how the galaxy worked. Order, called the council speaker, a tall creature with crystal formations growing from its head. We will have order! Slowly, the chamber quieted. Sarah was directed to a platform in the center of the room where everyone could see her. We are gathered, the speaker announced, to address the unprecedented situation regarding the human known as Sarah Chen. High Technician Veltar, present your findings. Veltar moved to a display station. Screens around the chamber lit up with information. Council members, Veltar began, our scanners have functioned perfectly for 3,000 years. They have never registered a false reading. Yesterday, they classified this human as Category 10, Maximum Risk. Murmurs rose from the assembled beings. Initially, we believed this was an error. However, upon accessing classified records about the human homeworld and species history, We have discovered significant discrepancies in their public classification. The screens showed images of Earth from space. Green and blue and white, it looked peaceful. Sol 3 appears normal, Veltar continued, but detailed analysis reveals it is a Class 12 death world. Gravity 70% above galactic standard. Atmospheric oxygen at toxic levels for most species. New images appeared. Dinosaurs, saber-toothed tigers, massive sharks, and other Earth predators. 94% of large fauna are predatory species. The dominant species, humans, evolved not just to survive in this environment, but to become its apex predator. The chamber was completely quiet now. Even species that normally made constant noise had gone silent. Furthermore, Veltar said, human military history reveals a level of conflict unmatched by any known species. They have spent their entire development fighting each other with weapons and tactics designed for total destruction. A representative from the peaceful gatherers, a species that had never known war, spoke up. If they are so violent, why did we allow them into the council? Because, Veltar replied, they stopped. The screens showed images of human space exploration, peaceful first contact protocols, diplomatic missions. Despite their capacity for violence, they chose cooperation. They reached the stars not as conquerors, but as explorers seeking friendship. Lies, declared the representative from the Zalani Empire. No species abandons its nature so completely. May I speak? Sarah asked from her platform. The speaker looked around the chamber. You may address the council. Sarah took a breath. She could feel the attention of beings from across the galaxy focused on her. My species hasn't abandoned its nature, she said clearly. We've learned to control it. Explain, the speaker requested. Where I come from, everything wants to kill everything else. Plants, animals, weather, even the ground itself can be deadly. We survived by becoming very good at fighting. Sarah paused, choosing her words carefully. But being good at fighting taught us something important. We learned that the strongest fighter isn't always the one who wins. Sometimes the smartest fighter is the one who finds a way not to fight at all. Pretty words, said the Zalani representative. But your scanner reading says otherwise. The scanner reading is accurate, Sarah replied. I am dangerous. My species is dangerous. We could probably hurt most of you badly if we wanted to. Nervous shuffling came from the chamber. But we don't want to, Sarah continued. We came to the stars because we were tired of hurting each other. We wanted to find something better. Champion Corgan stood up from his seat in the gallery. I can confirm this human's capabilities in combat. She defeated me easily, but chose restraint when she could have chosen destruction. One individual does not represent an entire species, argued another representative. No, Sarah agreed, but I do represent how we choose to use what we are. High Technician Veltar activated a new display. There is something else the Council must consider. The screen showed classification levels for various galactic threats. Pirates, rogue AI systems, ancient weapons, and worse things that sometimes appeared in deep space. Category 8 and 9 threats occasionally emerge that our normal security forces cannot handle. We have always managed these through overwhelming numbers and advanced technology. Veltar highlighted several recent incidents where such threats had caused significant damage before being contained. However, the Keithran continued, a Category 10 resource could potentially handle such threats more efficiently. The implication was clear. The galaxy sometimes faced dangers that required dangerous solutions. You suggest using humans as weapons? The peaceful gatherer representative asked in horror. No, Sarah said firmly. You suggest using humans as protectors. She stepped forward on her platform. My people have experience with Category 10 threats. We've been living with them our whole existence. Explain, the speaker requested. The biggest Category 10 threat any species faces is itself, Sarah said. "We've learned how to live with that, how to be dangerous when we need to be, but controlled when we don't need to be." A new voice spoke from the chamber. It belonged to a species Sarah had not seen before, ancient-looking, covered in what might have been metal or stone. "The archivists have records of species like yours," the being said slowly. "They usually destroy themselves before reaching the stars." "Usually," Sarah agreed, "but not always. Those who survive," the ancient being continued, "often become either great protectors or great destroyers. Which are you?" Sarah looked around the chamber at all the different faces watching her. Some showed fear, others curiosity. A few seemed hopeful. "We're trying to be protectors," she said. "But that choice isn't just ours to make. It's yours, too." "What do you mean?" the speaker asked. "You can classify my species as a threat and try to contain us. That might work, but it would waste what we could offer." Sarah gestured to the threat display that was still showing. "Or you can accept that sometimes the galaxy needs something dangerous to fight other dangerous things. Sometimes you need a Category 10 to handle problems that Category 9s can't solve." The chamber erupted in discussion again. Different species argued about risk and benefit, about trust and safety. Finally, the speaker called for order. "The council will vote," it announced. "3 options. First, classify humans as contained threat, maximum security protocols. Second, classify humans as expelled from council space. Third, classify humans as specialized emergency response, Category 10 protective status." The voting took an hour. Sarah stood quietly on her platform, while representatives from dozens of worlds decided her species' future. When the results were announced, the vote was closer than Sarah had hoped, but clear enough. By majority decision, humans are classified as specialized emergency response, Category 10 protective status. They will serve as the Council's resource for threats beyond normal containment capability. Sarah felt relief wash through her. "Thank you." "Do not thank us yet," the speaker said. "This decision comes with great responsibility. Your species will be called upon when other options have failed. You will face dangers that could destroy worlds." "We understand," Sarah replied. "We've been preparing for that our whole history." Later, as Sarah walked through Kepler Station's corridors, she noticed the difference immediately. The scanner at the main entrance announced her presence differently now. "Human Category 10, Protective Protocol," the computer said as she passed through. Instead of barriers slamming down and alarms screaming, other beings simply stepped aside respectfully. They knew what she was now, and what that meant. A young alien child, something that looked like a purple teddy bear, pointed at her and asked its parent a question in their language. The parent's answer, translated by Sarah's universal communicator, made her smile. "That's one of the Guardians, little one. They're here to keep us safe when scary things come to visit." Sarah continued walking. Behind her, the child waved. She waved back. Marcus was waiting for her at the human diplomatic quarters. "So how does it feel to be officially terrifying?" he asked with a grin. "Honestly," Sarah replied, "it feels like responsibility." "Good," Marcus said, "because I just got word from Earth. They're sending more diplomatic teams to other council stations. Apparently everyone wants to meet the Category 10 humans now." Sarah nodded. "And they're ready for this?" "They're ready to try to be what you showed them we could be." Sarah looked out the viewport at the stars beyond the station. Somewhere out there were threats that the galaxy's normal forces couldn't handle. Someday soon, she and others like her would be called to face them. She had told the council that humans were trying to be protectors rather than destroyers. Now they would all find out if that was true. But for the first time since the scanner had marked her as Category 10, Sarah felt like her species was exactly where they belonged.